Oh, what fun it is to ride. Ronan, Mashy Bash, thanks for the likes. Okay, hit that screen, share live. We're going to launch right about now. And indeed, it's May the 4th. The Principle of Creation, Part 1. I did not say in my advertisement, Part 1. This is going to be Part 1. This is a condensed, shortened version of a really long lecture. Next week, I'm going to do Part 2, which will equally blow your mind. Now, so here's that. On the 11th, next week, I'll be doing Part 2, the 3 blessings. Now, while we're on now, I'm going to be alternately looking at the TikTok people down here on my tablet, and I'm going to be recording into a handheld high-def camera that's going on YouTube later on. If you want to see all my stuff, YouTube, The Principle Project of San Diego, and on TikTok, you're on it now, The Principle Project. Are we ready? Now, where was that person that said there was no God? I hope you're still here. This could be your rebirthday. And by the way, May the 4th be with you. It's May the 4th, everyone. What fun, right? Okay, and I want you to know, this is for everyone. Let me see if I'm... Okay, very good. Making sure, I got a lot of tech going on here. I'm making sure everything's working. This is for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're an atheist, a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Christian, an agnostic, whatever. You don't know, you're not sure. It doesn't matter. You're going to get something out of this. If you have an open mind, you're going to get something out of this. You will add to your body of knowledge that you already have. Whatever you are, you will become a better whatever you are, okay? Thinking caps on. That's right, Malachi. Thinking caps on, seatbelts fastened. This could be a rough ride for some folks. If we are always content with the everyday things that we see and hear, then we will never arrive at true knowledge. Who said that? Yeah, Plato, a really, really smart dude. We can never be content with where we are intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, financially. It's human nature to want to progress. Incentive drives the planet. Incentive drives innovation, right? Innovation drives science and technology and the evolution of man. Now, one question everyone needs to answer for themselves. You don't have to. You're a free moral agent, right? You're a free moral agent. But everyone really should aspire to answer the question for themselves, yay or nay, is there a God? It's very consequential. If there is a God and we are resultant beings, we may be missing out on something. If we don't believe in God, we may be missing out on a very, very important aspect of our lives. All right? If not, eat, drink, and be merry, for today, tomorrow we die. Unalive. Oh, sorry. So where do we begin our quest? SpongeBob wants to know. Well, one very, very clear place to begin looking is logic. Logic. I came to belief through logic and science, actually. If we want to know about an artist's mind, right? Well, what's the first place to look? His works, the things that he makes. Michelangelo Buonarroti is a classic example of an artist's mind which is so prolific and so energized and so overflowing with creativity. One way we can find out who is he is look at the things that he makes. Here's the Pietà. The Pietà. He captures the grief of Mary as her slain son is laying in her lap in stone. It took him 7 years to do this, chipping away every day for 7 years, chipping and chipping. And someone asked him and said, how do you do this? He says, I just bring out what is already there. What? He brings out what is already there. That's really profound when you think about it. Oh, Hunter Shattuck. Hang on. The question is, why should God focus on one of countless planets and galaxies? Good question. Stay with me. We'll answer that. We'll answer that. Oh my goodness, we're going to answer that. Look at the Sistine Chapel. I was there in 1975. And this is, I mean, the whole place. Rome is just an absolutely amazing place. I was there in the Holy Year in 75. And this is the Sistine Chapel. Genesis to Revelation painted on the roof. Took him another 7 years right there. On a scaffold, watch the movie The Agony and the Ecstasy. Charlton Heston plays Michelangelo. It is a fantastic film to show the difficulty that was involved in making the Sistine Chapel happen. Just getting paid for him was a problem, right? So the point is, though, if you want to know an artist's mind, his intellect, his emotion, and his will, you look at the things he creates, right? Let's take a look at this. Boom. The principle of cause and effect applies here. Michelangelo has an idea in his mind. He sketches it to paper and then makes it come into reality, right? Intellect, emotion, and will usually comprise cause, and then there's an effect. It's Newtonian principle. It's not my principle. It's Newtonian principle of cause and effect. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? Most causes are invisible. Boom, Steve Jobs has an idea for the iPhone. It starts up here, invisibly. I'm going to do it like this. I think it's going to look like that. It's going to be about this big. It'll be about that heavy. It'll have a camera. It'll have graphic user interface, etc., etc. It will be compatible with the internet. It'll be able to communicate with other people, etc., etc., etc. And finally, goes to paper, goes to blueprint, goes to production, goes to manufacturer, goes to the end user, right? Invisible intellect, emotion, and will results in a visible cause. Likewise, if we're going to examine the creator, if we're going to examine the existence of a creator, we would have to look at the things that creator has created. That makes logical sense, right? Now, ordinarily, I would tackle this bad boy right here. Ordinarily, I would break God down into parts. Male, female, mind, body, internal, external. It takes too much time. That takes a half hour all by itself. So suffice it to say, I'm going to condense that entire graphic down to something very, very simple and very workable for our TikTok crowd tonight. Today. This is the afternoon, actually. Tap that screen, share it live. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it is actually. Gender is binary in nature. There are the occasional, like worms are asexual, etc. But the general norm is masculine and feminine, and I'm going to show you why right now. Stick with me. Boom. If we look at mankind, you have men and women. At the top of the food chain, etc., in quotes, animals, male and female. Humans do not run by instinct. Animals do run by instinct. A spider hops off its mama's back after it's born and is not taught how to make a web. He just knows what to do. A beaver is not taught by the parents how to make a dam. It knows it somehow inherently. If you know about computers, you know about BIOS and CMOS, ROM memory. ROM memory is built-in memory, read-only memory. In a computer, it can't be changed, right? Then there's RAM memory, random access, which goes up and down. So you can adjust RAM memory. ROM memory is the same thing in creation as instinct in creation is raw memory to computers, right? So a beaver, different animals do things by instinct, right? People do what they do by a moral code. There are certain things in the human race that we just don't allow. We don't acquiesce to, such as unaliving. We have to say unaliving, unfortunately, for the TikTok crowd. Coming down the food chain now, you got plants, stamen and pistil. Interesting. It's going to get interesting from here on out, okay? Please, not 18,000 genders. Ain't happening. Mushrooms with 18,000 genders, everybody. Plants have stamen and pistil, the reproductive parts of a plant, right? Plants are made of molecules. Here's where the rubber hits the road. It starts getting a little more interesting here. Molecules have a positive and negative element. If you take 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen, what do you get? Show of hands? Water, that's right. Molecules are made of atoms. Atoms have a proton and electron. Now we're getting down in the invisible realm, what we can't see with the physical eyes. We can see this with an electron microscope with assistance, but we can't see this with the naked eye. It gets even more interesting. Yeah, right. That's what your college professor told you. Atoms are made of particles, and particles have a positive and negative valence. And particles are made of energy. You can't get around it, boys and girls. Particles are made of energy, and energy is invisible. We're going to take this a little deeper. Stay with me. Tap the screen, share it live. I'm telling you, we're going down the rabbit hole. I said this is your matrix moment, and I'm not playing. All right? So what does that look like? It looks about like this. Let's take the word God out of the equation. Shall we? Atheists, you'll love this. Let's take the word God out of the equation altogether. Let's find a new scientific word for a universal presence in the cosmos. Let's try this. Universal prime force. We already said that particles are made of energy, and energy is invisible. There's no way around this. If that's the case, by Newtonian principle, that invisibility, that substance has to come from somewhere. It has to have a cause by Newtonian principle. So that force is universal. That force is prime, and may the fourth be with you. What? That's right, I said it. So we're talking about a creative intelligence in the universe as a scientific principle first and foremost. Not even talking about a religious principle. Could it be that that force in the universe, that universal prime force, could be expressing itself in many, many different ways? The problem is when people get their own individual universal prime force, the Christians, the Jewish the person, the Buddhist, the Hindu, the Muslim, whatever, they think that's their own. And this is used as a justification for war, for persecution, for prejudice, for all kinds of terrible things that happen. Rather than being happy with your universal prime force and sharing your universal prime force, many times people like to impose it on other people. And that should never happen, right? So let's look at this God from a different perspective. The word God is prejudicial. For some people, it means, for me, I have to say, years ago when I was in Catholic school, first, second, third grade, I had a sister, Sister Mary Benigna, and she was not benign. I was always the class clown, and she would sink her nails. One time, she sunk her nails into my arm until blood came out. But you know what? In retrospect, I learned respect. I didn't cut up in the class anymore. She had it with me up to here. I forget what the point was of that. Anyway. Oh boy. All right. So, what did Max Planck think about this? Now, Max Planck is considered the father of quantum theory and quantum mechanics, and a contemporary, by the way, of Albert Einstein. Let this sink in. Let this sink in. Share the live. Tap the screen. Here it comes. Max Planck. He says, as a man who has devoted his entire life. Now, wait a minute. Before I go in here, you need to know he got the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1918. All right? This quote came in 1944 in Vienna after a lifetime in an electron microscope. A lifetime in an electron microscope. Boom. He says, as a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you as a result of my research about atoms, this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. He ends this with this. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. How interesting that the word matrix is part of the culture now, because this is the trend. This is the trend. Quantum physics has now reached its cul-de-sac. It cannot go any further, and we're going to talk about this in a couple of minutes. Thanks for the follows. Thanks for the likes. Tap the screen, share it live. What did Einstein say? Einstein said, I want to know God's thoughts. All the rest are details. What? Are you kidding? That's incredible. He also said, science without religion is crippled, and religion without science is blind. How terribly interesting. Why would he say that? There's a really good reason why he would say that. Here's why. Because the church held that the earth was the center of the solar system for the longest time. Copernicus comes along in 1543 and writes on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres and proves the heliocentric solar system. All right? What happens after that? Several years later, the Galileo affair happens in 1610, culminated with the trial and condemnation of Galileo by the Roman Catholic Inquisition in 1633. Galileo was prosecuted for his support of heliocentrism, the astronomical model in which the Earth and planets revolve around the sun at the center of the solar system. Even Galileo said, yeah, this is actually correct. But he got locked up. He was on house arrest for the rest of his life. Finally, in 1822, the Catholic Church officially accepted the heliocentric solar system. Okay. Oh, it's a great example. Einstein was fabulously conflicted about the existence of God. He knew there was something out there. He could never put his finger on it. But he knew there's something bigger. This is a man that dealt in the subatomic world his entire life. And he was flabbergasted by what he found. He knew there's something out there, but he would never attach an anthropomorphic model to the existence of God or supreme being. But Einstein was historically fabulously conflicted about it, right? He continues. Einstein says, the cosmic religious experience is the strongest and noblest driving force behind scientific research. He could have only been referring to Isaac Newton. And this is the 400th anniversary of the birth of Isaac Newton, 1624. Tap the screen and share it live. So, listen to what, now again, we're talking about the discoverer of calculus, gravity, first reflecting telescope, and many, many other things, right? Newton is considered the standard of scientific research even today. 400 years later, he's still considered the standard of scientific research, right? Oh, really, deal with my mortality. I am fearless. Fearless. Because I know where I'm going, all right? Here's what Isaac Newton says. To every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. The law of cause and effect is inviolate. It is universal. And he goes on and says, thinking caps on, seatbelts fastened, this most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent being. All variety of created objects which represent order and life in the universe could happen only by the willful reasoning of its original creator, whom I call the Lord God. People like to say, oh, religion is for the weak of mind, etc., etc. I beg to differ. Max Planck said different. Max Planck was a lifelong believer. Werner von Braun. Werner von Braun came across to the United States from the Nazis on Operation Paperclip during World War II to help us with our rocketry program. He said, nature does not know extinction. All it knows is transformation. Everything science has taught me, not his supposition, everything that science has taught him and continues to teach me strengthens my belief in the continuity of our spiritual existence after death. Communism is the Antichrist, okay? Michio Kaku, Dr. Michio Kaku, one of the co-founders of string theory, well published, says top scientist claims proof that God exists, says humans live in a world made by rules created by an intelligence. He goes on to a lengthy explanation of why, and he talks about the matrix. He talks about a matrix. Now, right, okay. Enter Peter Higgs. Here you go, atheists. And the CERN Super Collider. Boom. Wow, what's the big deal about the CERN Super Collider? It's this, the Higgs boson. The Higgs boson. The Higgs boson is sometimes referred to as the God particle, much to the chagrin of scientists who prefer the official name. Its discovery lends strong support to the standard model of particle physics, which is thought to govern the basic building blocks of matter. The Higgs boson particle is important to the standard model because it signals the existence of the Higgs field, an invisible energy field present throughout the universe, that imbues other particles with mass. Since its discovery 8 years ago, the particle has been making waves in the physics community. Get it? Waves. So what's happening now, my atheist friends, is that science has reached the end of the road. They have gone as far into quantum mechanics as they possibly can. What the Higgs boson is propounding is the fact that now we have a particle that is taking something, matter, from an invisible realm and bringing it into the physical realm. If atoms are being imbued with mass, if they're having mass added to them, they have to be getting that mass from somewhere. And it's invisible. Alas, Peter Higgs just died 3 weeks ago. Now, that's a little ground, a little bit of food for thought about the existence of a supreme being, something to munch on. Again, I said at the beginning, this is a very, very truncated, very shortened presentation for the sake of TikTok. All right? Tap the screen, share it live. Many, many ideas are competing to solve the problems of the world. Socrates, Confucius, Buddha, Hinduism, Islam, etc., and the Judeo-Christian tradition. And now there's a weird fascination with socialism and communism, which is another lecture that I'll do at another time. Suffice it to say, communism is the Antichrist. Yes, I said it. But the problem is I can prove it. We won't do that today, though. Today, we're going to deal with the Judeo-Christian tradition. Why? Well, several reasons. It's the most dominant faith on the planet. We are in the year of our Lord. It just so happens 2024, interestingly enough. So let's expound a little bit on the Judeo-Christian tradition. And like I said, this is for everyone. This is for the atheist, the Christian, the Jew, the Muslim, the Buddhist. It doesn't matter. You will get something out of this. This is a new take on the Christian tradition. All right? Oh, John Lindsay. Oh, no. Tap screen, share live. We have to ask ourselves a very, very important question. All right? Could it be, is it possible that new truth is being revealed? Is there something new, brand new, on the planet today in the Judeo-Christian tradition? Interesting question. And we can answer that in the affirmative. Oh, I love John Lindsay. He's great. If it's the one I'm thinking of. New Discourses, right? Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but John Lindsay's with New Discourses. He's absolutely brilliant. Is new truth being revealed? Well, the Bible and new truth. Could it be? Well, most Christians will tell you, oh, no, it's all been done. There's nothing left. Jesus finished everything, blah, blah, blah. But au contraire, mon frère. Au contraire. Let's see what Jesus says about that. In the 16th chapter of John, he says, I have yet many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. Howbeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, comes, he will guide you into all truth, for he will not speak of himself, but he will show you the things that are to come. He will guide you into all truth. Interesting. Jesus continues in the 25th verse, these things have I spoken to you in Proverbs, but the time comes when I shall no more speak to you in Proverbs, but I will show you plainly of the Father. The scientific world, rather than explaining God away, is actually explaining God. There's no way out of it. The atheistic world, the unbelieving world, is in a cul-de-sac, and that cul-de-sac is getting tighter and tighter and tighter all the time. But Jesus said, I will tell you plainly of the Father. If quantum physics is not being told plainly of the Father, I don't know what is. Now, no, a donkey and a snake never did talk. And that's another lecture I'll do. That's called The Fall of Man. A donkey and a snake did not talk. It's symbolic. Yeah, quantum physics is spirituality. That's right. It's the external form of internal spirituality. So, the Bible starts out with Adam and Eve in the ideal. What we're doing now is establishing what time are we in historically, and is something new about to happen. When we see this chart, you're going to say, wow, something's up. Something's up. According to the scriptural narrative, again, this is another understanding of Scripture. I'm not saying this is the absolute truth, you got to believe this. No. This is another take. That's why I say this is for everyone. This is for your edification. This is for your knowledge, to add to your knowledge base. This is going to be very interesting for you. The Bible says that Adam and Eve were in the ideal and they had a fall of some sort, which is another lecture I'll do at another time, in excruciating, painful detail. 2,000 years after that, Moses comes with the Ten Commandments in the Old Testament, right? Out of the chaos of the fall, everything is whack. Genesis 6:6 says that God repented that he made man. God repented that he made man. The flood comes, wipes everything out except for one family, 8 people and a boat full of animals, all right? So Moses comes with the Ten Commandments. Now, man has rails to run on. Thou shalt not, do this, don't do that. 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments. We have some kind of rails to run, some kind of moral code to guide man out of the... Can you imagine the chaos and the confusion and the craziness post-fall? And out of that comes Moses and the 10 Commandments. A beginning, at least a beginning, right? Thanks for the follows. Thanks for the likes, guys. Jesus comes 2,000 years later with the Gospels and the New Testament. What does Jesus say? I am the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. Interesting. Then he says, the law and the prophets are fulfilled in these 2. Love God, love your neighbor. First 5 commandments are vertical between man and God. The last 5 are horizontal between people. Don't steal, don't unalive, etc., etc. Thou shalt not have any gods before me, right? Vertical and horizontal. Jesus said everything is consummated in 2 commandments. Love God, love your neighbor. If you're loving God and loving your neighbor, you're not going to unalive people. You're not going to steal them. You're not going to covet your neighbor's wife. You're not going to have weird gods before the God, right? It's all centered on love. Love. Jesus brought love, the love of God. That's the New Testament, right? The Old Testament was the master-servant relationship, right? In here. Master-servant, right? Jesus brings father-son. Jesus brings father-son for the first time in history. This is an evolution of the Judeo-Christian tradition. Jesus gets unalived, assassinated for all practical purposes, and he wasn't supposed to be, by the way, and I can prove it. That's another lecture. Jesus says, I've got to come back. So that leads us to the completed Testament age. We still have another coming, right? Yeah, you're right. He says, I might still have to unalive, even if I love my neighbor. Thank God we are not under that. We are not under that. People still do that, but it ain't right, okay? All right, let's continue. Okay, so here it is. Wait a minute. How terribly interesting. Every 2,000 years in the Judeo-Christian tradition, something new happens. Moses comes 2,000 years after the fall. Jesus comes 2,000 years after Moses. Now, we've just crossed over the 2,000, the millennial mark. We are 24 years past when something new should be appearing. And Jesus said, I will tell you plainly of the Father, and there's more. I will lead you into all truth. Jesus is promising that at a time in the future, everything's going to be made clear. God has been driving history If you take the word history, divide it into two words, what do you get? You get his story. Doesn't prove anything. I know this. I know this. It doesn't prove anything, but it is an interesting point that history is actually the force of God moving through time and events. History is not just a series of random disconnected events, but it's following an actual pattern that can be expanded. That's another lecture. I'm going to do these every week, everybody. I'm going to expand this infinitely. This will be expanded like crazy. Stick with me. This is part 1. This is a piece of part 1. Part 2 is coming next week. We're going to talk about the 3 blessings. That'll blow your mind too. Your whole purpose of life will be revealed next week. So, where do we begin? Genesis 1. Okay? If we're going to go from the scriptures, we're going to go from Genesis 1. So God, this is seatbelts. Malachi, are you still here? Malachi, are you still here? You got your seatbelt fastened, your thinking cap on? Stand-up comedy? Really? You must have come in very late, right? I'll bet, May, you came in very late, didn't you? Okay, here we go. Genesis 1:27. God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Seatbelts fastened, Christians. Male and female. Created he them. We've already talked about this. Male and female in the human realm. Male and female in the animal realm. Stamen and pistil in the plant realm. Proton and electron in the atomic realm. Particles, positive and negative valences. This goes from the bottom of creation all the way to the top, because this is the nature of God. The essential nature of God is not an old man throwing lightning bolts down from heaven. God is the harmonized being of masculinity and femininity. Boom. Remember, we talked about this. We talked about this. Even the Bible understands this. All right? Maturing is realizing we all had to come from somewhere, and it's cause and effect. There's 8 billion people on the earth right now. There had to be 8 million, there had to be 800,000, there had to be 800, there had to be 8, there had to be 2. It's just a matter of numbers. There had to be 2 to start everything. This is logic. This is not religion. That's just logic. That's biology. Okay? Energy is invisible. At the very building blocks of matter, as Max Planck said, there is no matter as such. It's just atoms in motion at different valences and different speeds. Second coming is imminent. Trust me. Again, that's another lecture I'll do. I got a bunch of these. Okay. Now, interesting. St. Paul. Paul was writing to the Romans, right? Romans 1:20. And he didn't have the benefit of electron microscopes and a laboratory full of gear. But here's what he said. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even as eternal power and Godhead, so they're without excuse. The invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen. This is 2,000 years ago. Even Paul gets this. Even Paul gets this, unaided by scientific advance. Because he was a Pharisee. He knew his scriptures. He knew the Torah. The Torah said male and female. He saw it all the way down the line. So, here it is, folks. The Creator, whatever that Creator is the harmonized being of original seatbelts fastened, thinking caps on. Malachi, B3, are you here still? I did talk about electrons, proton, electron. You must have come in late. The Creator is the harmonized being of original positivity, negativity, masculinity, femininity, and internal character, intellect, emotion, and will, or heart. Heart. The essential power of the universe is the love of God. His external manifestation is intellect, emotion, and will. But what drives intellect, emotion, and will from God? It's the love of God. The heart of God is the heartbeat of the universe. We have intellect, emotion, and will because we are resultant beings. So, God is the harmonized being of original positivity, negativity, masculinity, femininity, internal, invisible character, and external form, the atomic world. God begins with subatomics and works up from there. Hence, the Higgs boson. Love is quantifiable. Period. Full stop. Way to go, Taylor. Very good. So, could it be that to begin with, God is actually a scientific principle? God is a scientific principle. God is at the very base of the subatomic world. God comes through the physical world, through the Higgs boson, through the atomic world. The Higgs boson is the biggest discovery in the history of quantum mechanics, right? Because now we see how atoms get their mass. They're getting it from the invisible world. They're getting it from an invisible world. If that's the case, there has to be an originator of that material. Someone is originating that material. Look at the Big Bang, quote unquote. Scientists now call it the singularity. The very fact that things are in motion in the universe means that the universe did not pre-exist. There is physical matter in the universe, which by Newtonian principle must be accounted for. Matter has to be accounted for from the principle of cause and effect. The fact that this planet is going 68,000 miles an hour around the sun and rotating on its own axis at 800 miles an hour tells you it was flung into motion. It was forced into motion by an explosion of some sort. Something threw that planet into motion and threw all the planets in the universe into motion. It's simply inarguable. Humans were the last creation of God. God created the world, animals before. That's exactly correct. And evolution is true. Sorry. Sorry, Christians. Evolution is true. The problem is with the evolutionists is they negate the power of God. God is the originator of DNA, and God manipulates DNA over time. At a certain point, the Bible's clear. Genesis 2:9. God created man of the dust of the ground and then breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. He became a living soul. Dust of the ground, abiogenesis. Hello, very simple. Even the Bible says this. We came from lower order, and at a certain point, God infuses a spirit. Now this one, Adam and Eve, are my son and daughter. This one has a spirit, as opposed to the ones that preceded him. So, here is that universal prime force reaching out in 1,000 different directions, trying to approach mankind to reveal himself, him and herself. When did you come in, Johnny McJohnny face? Did you just come in? Sounds like it. Now, I think I'm going to leave that right there. Golly, I could go on forever, but I like to try to keep these to about 40 minutes. Now, next week, Saturday, May 11th, I'll be doing part 2, the 3 blessings. Be fruitful, multiply, have dominion. I'll be explaining that in excruciating detail, because why that is important is because it tells you why you're here. Why are you here to begin with? To be fruitful, to multiply, and have dominion. People really think God will show himself to people who doubt him. Well, I'll tell you what, Angela, sometimes Jesus knocks on the door. He says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If you open, I will come in and sup with you and you with me. Jesus won't beat the door down. God will not beat your door down. He may make circumstances come around. See? No, the existence of God is a foregone conclusion. It's over. So, next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my camera off in just a couple seconds, and then I'll continue with the TikTokers for a little while. Again, next week, Saturday, May 11th, 12 o'clock straight up. I'm going to try to do these every Saturday now. I'm going to tackle this bad boy right here. Oh, yeah. We're going to break it down. I do have a YouTube. And that's coming up. Next slide. Don't go. Don't leave town. Next slide is going to tell you where to see the YouTube. Some people have a lack of faith. Yeah. There is proof, though, Angela. The beautiful thing is that there is scientific proof for the existence of at least a universal prime force extant in the cosmos. You might have come in late. I don't know. Again, I try to keep these nice and short, but look, check it out. Next week we're gonna rip this guy. We're gonna rip this puppy open right here. Be fruitful, multiply, have dominion. Man, that is gonna be a roller coaster ride. That's gonna be fun. Okay. Now, where to see my other material? YouTube, The Principal Project of San Diego. The Principal Project of San Diego. I've got all kinds of stuff on that site. This particular presentation is going to go up on YouTube probably in the next hour. Okay. Now, and again, may the 4th be with you. May the 4th be with you. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to shut off my camera and I'll play with the TikTokers.